Mm-hmm.
All right. So, final topic before we hop into the Grand Prix proper. It's kind of a bit different. It's not necessarily a news story, but it's something that I've been noticing. I've been seeing it. We'd be kind of lapse if we didn't talk about it. You know, we're the American F1 podcast here. We hope you're our first choice when you think of an American F1 podcast. And look, we've been staunch supporters of F1 in this country for a very, very, very long time. And just the general tone around the first race in America this year feels very different. Last year, it felt like this was going to be this new pop and fresh thing. Let's see what happens. There's lots of VIPs and everything. You look at it this year, and it just feels very meh, if I'm being brutally honest. And you've seen it in the ticket market. So if you are interested, if you are in the Miami area and want to try to go, you may have weighted yourself into actually not a bad deal, because there are deals all over the place from the vendor and in the secondary market. And I can vouch for the secondary market. There's as much as 40% off, if not more, some of these original prices. And that's just if you buy it from the track itself. And if you're looking on the secondary market, you can get some really good seats for not a lot of initial gate. You know, the trick of it is like, if you're local and in the area, this is probably your best shot to be able to go. There was a great piece by, and I tweeted about it earlier this week, a girl by the name of Elizabeth Blackstock, who also helped author the Rich Energy book, which I eventually want to get her on our show and have a conversation about that book, because that is fascinating stuff. About how a lot of the people who they were interviewing, and we had people on our show last time that said, yeah, it was okay, but that wasn't necessarily worth what they all paid for it. And this is a big topic, a spot, I think, with F1 in this country. We've seen, like, I've been a member of Circuit of the Americas since its beginning, since 2012. I've seen how the ticket prices, never mind the seat license or all the other crap that go with it, I'm just talking gate ticket prices, have gotten to. And they're, I think, at the upper end of what I'm willing to spend now. So if they keep going any higher, it's going to break my heart to do it. But I may have to say goodbye to those seats. And Cody, you've been with me on a couple of these, so you know what we get at Circuit of the Americas. I've always kind of defended it and said that I thought we had value, but when the Miami grandstand prices are $1,500 plus a seat, I don't know how, even if the race is the best race in the world, I don't know how you start to justify that. So Cody, where are you at with this? Sorry, I'm going to throw it to you.
I think it's kind of nuts. I mean, you figure that going to Formula One, it's, like a weekend long sporting event, right? So you might expect to pay, more than, say, if you're going to the ball game or something. But yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like going on a family vacation to go to Formula One for the weekend. So it's, I think that's getting kind of ridiculous. I can see why they're having a hard time selling all their tickets for Miami, because, last year wasn't the most exciting race, and it was saved last year probably by the luster of it being the first time racing there, but don't have that anymore. And unless we get a real banger, I think that popularity for Miami is probably going to continue to fall, unfortunately. And I really hope that doesn't affect COTA, because like you're saying, I love it. I love going to COTA. It's always a blast. But even just from last year to this year, I seem to remember that the ticket price jumped up significantly. And yeah, I agree with you that it's going to start approaching that point of, do we really want to do this?
Because this sport is still relatively, you don't have the generation over generation. You don't have the dad who went to Formula One taking their kids to get into Formula One. You've got this very, not almost flimsy fan base at this point. And it doesn't mean that they're not loyal. Right now, the television numbers are telling you the exact opposite. for a race that had 13 overtakes, there was almost 1 million people who got up and watched Baku here in the U.S. So, it doesn't mean that they can't be loyal and that they haven't been. It's just that it's not deeply rooted in a lot of history yet. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not careful, and I know that the organizers of this race have gone through a lot of hell. Like the layout that we have is not the layout that they wanted to do. It's literally the fifth iteration and the fifth compromise with the community around it to try to make sure that that they were willing to let the race happen. And we've
Mm-hmm.
also now gotten a year's worth of data that said that the decibels that they thought were going to be so terrible really didn't come to fruition. So none of all that other stuff ended up, going against it. But now you've got this kind of flimsy layout that nobody really loves, that they
Mm-hmm.
can't go back on. And you've got, the culture of that if you're not a VIP or if you don't have 20 grand to just drop on a weekend, this isn't really for you. Now I know the organizers have opened up more general admission, which I also think is driving a lot of the per seat prices on the secondary market down because you've just now diluted the base, and that's fine. But that's a hard experience to do. That's not necessarily a fun experience. For standing for 3 days we're going to talk about the weather. It's going to be hot and humid and maybe rainy. Um, so there's a lot of challenges, and my hope is that if that both Miami, Circuit of the Americas, and especially Las Vegas
Mm-hmm.
see the canary in the coal mine here and start to make adjustments, because the Vegas seats are insane. Even if you get something that's even close to that value, 2,500 a seat to sit in the grandstand in Vegas is nuts, and it's just
It
not attainable for most fans.
it's really hard to argue paying those kind of prices when you were telling me just before the show that you could go to see an IndyCar race that's honestly right now probably going to be more exciting for way less fraction of the price.
Yeah, I mean, compare that to, I was just looking at, one of the races that I've gone to a couple of times has been the Detroit Grand Prix when it was the
Hmm.
duels back to back and stuff like that. That race is, again, first year at a street track. They moved it off of Belle Isle, and they're going to have it around the streets of downtown Detroit.
Okay.
But the most expensive seat that I saw, 275 a ticket. You could actually do that. You can pack up a family of 3 or 4 people and make that work.
Hmm.
Here it's me, you, and maybe one other if we're lucky.
Yeah.
And that's if we're all gainfully employed and have a good time in the stock market if we're lucky too.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean it's just a cautionary tale. The good news is the fans are still here, but you gotta take this for what it is. I get trying to milk the cow as much as you can, but if you milk it too bad, it's going to turn on you fast, and that would be tragic. That would just
Hmm.
be tragic. All right. So, enough of my little rant about that.